Have you ever found yourself, just standing in your living room, looking around at all your stuff and feeling a little, well, buried?
Mm-hmm.
Like the sheer amount of things is subtly pressing in.
Yeah.
Or maybe you feel that constant background hum, that pressure to buy the next new thing, to keep up, just to have more.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really common feeling. We're pretty much immersed in it, aren't we?
Yeah.
And that feeling, it often comes from this tension between two really powerful, often opposing philosophies that shape our modern lives. I'm talking about minimalism and consumerism.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into today. We've kind of sifted through a pile of insightful articles, reflections on these topics. Think of it as your shortcut, your express lane to getting up to speed.
Right.
We want to bring you not just the definitions, but the core ideas, the surprising impacts, and maybe most importantly, how you can navigate this, materialistic world with more intention. Maybe find a bit more peace.
Yeah, find some balance. Our mission here is really to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge. So before we get too deep, it's probably important we're clear on what we actually mean by these two big concepts. A lot of people think minimalism is just decluttering.
Right, getting rid of stuff.
Yeah, but our sources kept highlighting that its real core is intentionality. It's a conscious choice to own and consume less.
Ah, okay. So it's less about the empty space itself and more about the mindful decision about what actually fills that space.
Precisely. The core principles are really intentionality, mindfulness, focusing on quality, not just quantity. It's about clearing out clutter, yes, but not just physical clutter, mental clutter, too.
Mental clutter, right.
The real push is towards prioritizing experiences, personal growth, over just piling up more things.
Okay, so if minimalism is about that intentionality, that thoughtful, less is more approach, then consumerism feels like the complete opposite.
It really is. Consumerism is, it's a cultural and economic system. It actively promotes getting more goods, more services in ever-increasing amounts.
Always more.
Always more. And it's built on this belief, often unspoken, that happiness and fulfillment come from constantly buying things. This often drives that relentless chase for material wealth, for status symbols.
And what really struck me from our sources was how often consumerism got described as a kind of treadmill that never stops.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You get that quick buzz from something new, but then poof, it's gone, and you're already looking for the next thing. Why is that cycle so difficult to get out of?
Well, that treadmill idea is spot on because it taps into the psychology. We're chasing a feeling, right? A temporary high the next purchase promises. But the sources talk about this thing called hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation.
Yeah, basically we get used to what we have really quickly. That initial thrill fades and it pushes us to seek the next, dopamine hit from buying something else.
Yeah.
And this endless chase, it often leads not just to cluttered homes and maybe debt, but also this underlying kind of constant feeling of dissatisfaction.
So looking at ownership, at possessions, through these two lenses, minimalism and consumerism, it really is like looking at two different worlds.
Completely different.
How does a minimalist actually approach the whole idea of possessions?
Well, minimalists tend to be very deliberate. They think carefully about each thing they own. They value quality, usefulness, way more than just having a lot of stuff. The goal is to surround yourself only with essentials, things that genuinely bring you joy or serve a real practical purpose or align with your core values.
Oh, yeah.
And by consciously getting rid of the clutter, the excess, the result isn't feeling deprived. It's actually a sense of freedom, less stress, a much more intentional way of living.
Yeah, it does sound liberating.
Oh.
And it just flies in the face of the consumerist view, where owning things, accumulating things, is so heavily emphasized, right?
Absolutely. The consumerist focus is very much on getting the latest trends, the luxury goods, the status symbols, often because there's this belief, or maybe hope, that these things will bring happiness or social validation.
We're keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. But chasing that constant consumption, well, it often leads straight to the problems we just mentioned. More clutter, sometimes serious debt, and that nagging dissatisfaction when the buzz wears off and you're back on the treadmill.
Yeah. And what made this really concrete were some of the personal stories we came across. Like one listener shared how they downsized in 2023 and got rid of half a house of stuff.
Wow, half a house.
Yeah. They even started something called Swedish death cleaning, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's this practice from Sweden where older folks proactively declutter. so their families don't have to deal with it later.
That sounds intense, but practical.
It does, but clearly effective for them. They noted, the act of minimalism starts with our own mental shifts and habit changes.
That really hits the nail on the head. It's an internal shift first, not just about checking stuff out. We saw another story. Someone moved from an 8-room house to a 2-room apartment.
Big change.
Huge change. And they discovered less is definitely more. They found they didn't actually miss anything they got rid of. It reinforces that surprising freedom people feel when they let go of the excess.
I was really struck by the story about the person with over 600 books.
Oh, yeah, the books.
And they had this realization, like, there was no practical reason to have that many books when libraries and online resources exist. What does that tell us about what we think we need versus what we actually need?
That's such a great example of questioning our assumptions about ownership. Often we collect things out of habit or that just-in-case feeling or even identity like, I'm a reader, so I must own hundreds of books.
Right.
But the minimalist view encourages asking, is this actually serving me now? Is it making my life better? Or is it just taking up space physically and, mentally?
Yeah.
The book example shows how easily we can swap ownership for access. And often access brings more freedom anyway.
And it's not just our homes and our bank accounts that fuel the effects, is it? Our sources really pointed to wider impacts these philosophies have, especially on the environment and our finances.
Definitely.
How does minimalism connect with environmental concerns?
Well, minimalism lines up very strongly with sustainability. It pushes for mindful consumption and seriously reducing waste.
Makes sense.
By choosing to buy less, and when you do buy, opting for high-quality, durable things that last, minimalists naturally lessen their environmental impact. They tend to make conscious choices, often favoring ethically sourced or eco-friendly products. It's part of the mindset.
Which is such a stark contrast to consumerism, which seems to just pour fuel on the fire of environmental problems.
It certainly can. Consumerism often drives excessive production, excessive consumption. This leads to resources getting depleted faster, mountains of waste, serious environmental damage.
Right.
Just think about things like fast fashion, clothes meant to be worn a few times and tossed, or disposable single-use products, or planned obsolescence.
Where things are designed to break.
Exactly, designed to break or become outdated quickly. All of that feeds this throwaway culture, which is really tough on the planet.
And financially, the difference is just as big. Minimalism seems to really foster financial freedom, conscious spending.
Absolutely. When you focus on real needs instead of just fleeting wants, you naturally save a lot more money. And this frees up resources for things like experiences, personal development, or just building financial stability. Minimalists tend to prioritize value durability. They often invest in items that last longer, which means buying replacements less often. Saves money in the long run.
Whereas consumerism, well, can feel like a constant leak in your wallet.
It often leads directly to financial strain. Impulse buys, the pressure to keep up with trends, sometimes racking up debt just to maintain a certain lifestyle or image.
Yeah.
That constant desire for more can create a really tough cycle of dissatisfaction and money stress.
One of the biggest roadblocks people hit when they try to declutter or lean towards minimalism is that guilt, the wasted money guilt.
Oh, that's a huge one. Really common.
You look at something expensive you bought, maybe you never even use it, but getting rid of it feels wrong, like throwing money away.
It does feel like that, but Joshua Becker, who was mentioned in our sources, has a really clear take on this. He points out that holding on to stuff you don't need, it won't bring the money back.
Right. The money's already gone.
Exactly. In fact, he argues it just serves as a constant daily reminder of the money you feel you wasted. And on top of that, it costs you a mental space, energy, just having it around. The money's spent. The item has just become a burden now.
That makes so much sense. It's like paying twice. And then one commenter asked an even deeper question. First, think about what is more valuable, wasted time or wasted money.
Ooh, that really flips the perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It forces you to reevaluate what true value is.
Yeah, it makes you weigh the broader costs, beyond just the sticker price. Often the time and mental energy we spend acquiring things, organizing them, maintaining them, it far outweighs the original cost. And it's worth remembering, too, letting go doesn't always mean landfill. One person suggested donating things. Schools, libraries, organizations helping single moms, people setting up new homes.
They said you could be a blessing to many people. That's a really powerful way to reframe it, turning what feels like a loss into a contribution.
A really positive way to look at it.
So ultimately, it sounds like finding your own thoughtful balance is the real goal
It
here.
absolutely is. The sources really converge on this idea of finding a personal balance between these principles, minimalism, consumerism. That's the path to a more fulfilling, more sustainable
It's
life.
not about rigid rules.
Not at all. It's about adopting a really mindful approach to consumption, consciously valuing experiences, relationships, growth, over just piling up stuff.
And speaking of values, Joshua Becker's quote really stood out. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of our greatest values by removing anything that distracts us from them.
That's such a powerful definition.
It really reframes it, doesn't it? It's not about restriction, it's about focus, about clarity.
Exactly. It's about realizing that when you consciously step off that consumer treadmill, you're not just making your own life better, you're actually freeing up resources.
Resources like,
Like your time, your money, your energy, resources you can then use to contribute to your community, pursue passions, make a difference in the world around you.
so it's not about squeezing your life into some tiny prescribed box or taking away joy.
Not at all.
It's actually the opposite. It's about making room for more.
More peace, more meaningful experiences, more growth,
Mhm.
more real contentment, more of whatever it is that truly matters to you.
It's an expansion, not a shrinking.
That's the essence of it, an expansion of life.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into minimalism and consumerism. It really shows how these big ideas shape our lives, our world. We've seen how living more intentionally can genuinely lead to more freedom, less stress.
And a healthier planet, healthier finances too. It really boils down to conscious choices. Understanding the impact of what we bring into our lives and the ripple effects of those decisions.
So as you go about your day, we want to leave you with a question to maybe mull over, something to sit with.
Okay.
What are the distractions in your life right now? Maybe things you're holding on to out of habit
Mm.
or that endless pursuit of the next thing. What distractions, if you intentionally remove them, would make significantly more room for what truly matters to you?
That's a powerful question.
We'd encourage you to maybe think about just one small step you could take this week. One step to intentionally promote your own greatest values. And maybe start building a healthier, more intentional relationship with stuff in this very consumer-driven world.